I'm plugging from my car, but as you can see, it's not moving. Look around you. Do you see? We sort of parked and we're not moving at all, are we?
Yes, in case you want to know, we are blogging from the car once again. Dangerous though it may be. Oh, anyway, today we're going to talk about phantom arguments, and oh, such wonderful arguments. Whenever I think about them, I just go, oh, goody! It is just, oh, they're just so delightful. The wonderful thing about a phantom argument is that you don't really have to articulate them exactly. But the terrifying thing about them is that they're impossible to answer. So, it's always best to be on the right side of a phantom argument. Ooh, phantom arguments. So, let's begin, shall we? Right. So, a phantom argument is when someone tells you that there's an argument out there, somewhere. It's immaterial, in fact. So immaterial, in fact, that they're not going to tell you what it is. They're simply going to say, I've got an argument. And that argument refutes your argument. And that argument proves that I'm right and you're very wrong. Quite wrong. In fact, it's impossible for you to be right because of this argument. Now then, how would you respond to such an argument? Of course, you couldn't say, well, let me tell you exactly why your argument is mistaken, fellow. Because, of course, you couldn't tell him that, could you? Because you don't know why his argument is fallacious. For you don't know exactly what the argument is. In fact, strictly speaking, you don't even know that the argument exists. For all you know, he could be making the whole thing up. And if he's making the whole thing up, well, then it's just a phantom argument. Well, it's even a phantom argument even if he's not making it up. What makes it a phantom argument is the fact that you don't know what it is. Jolly good. So, Greg Kokel from Stand to Reason has a response to such an argument. He's basically responding to the idea that some bloke will come along and they'll say, well, I may not be able to refute your argument, but I know someone who can. And if I can get you in touch with that person, he'll quickly show you that you're quite in the wrong. The Great Kokel says that you should respond to such a person by saying, well, I know people that can refute your people. It's inevitable that you're going to run into a sort of person who'll have a sort of eye patch on one eye, and he'll have a bit of a gruff in his voice. And he'll respond by saying, "Ar matey, I can top your toppers with my toppers." And of course, in that situation, there's not much you can do. Well, let me tell you some other situations where this phantom argument might come into play. Jehovah's Witnesses will sometimes use this argument. Like, you're talking to a Jehovah's Witness, and they can't respond to your argument. They don't know the response to your argument, but they're convinced that there is a response out there. Somebody in the organization knows how to answer you and has a knockdown, drag out argument to respond to you with. And so they'll say, well, let me get back to you with that. And they'll go and they'll ask around and they'll figure out what that argument is. Maybe there's an article somewhere, maybe somebody knows. But they're quite convinced that that argument is out there. And so, and it's not just Jehovah's Witnesses that do that. Really, to be quite honest, it's everybody that does that. In fact, I do that. Let me tell you the context in which I do it. Long time ago, singing "This'll be the day that I die." That has nothing to do with what we were just talking about. What we were talking about was how I use phantom arguments, and the way I do it is, well, see, the thing is, a long time ago. Oh, there we go again with a long time ago. In a galaxy far, far away. That's neither here nor there. A long time ago, I used to read a lot of philosophy and history, and I used to debate a lot, and I was learning, constantly learning. I was devouring books. I'd read a book a week, at least. And I really liked reading. And, there was a lot of subjects that I covered: the existence of God, the existence of the soul, logic, epistemology, ontology, metaphysics, ethics. and history too. You know, I started off with just Jesus, the resurrection of Jesus, the early church, Jesus' self-understanding, and then that went into sort of Roman history, Greek history, the Jewish history from the Babylonian exile up until the Bar Kokhba rebellion, and just became really interested in it and studying the worldview of Judaism and how Christianity fit into that. And after studying all these different subjects, one day it seems like, hold on, that's my phone ringing. Let's pick up where we left off, shall we? Anyway, you know, I was studying all these subjects and becoming more and more convinced all the time that Christianity was true, and I didn't think that I would ever be argued out of it. And but since then, I became lazy after that, I guess, because it became easy for me to argue with people, to win debates, and to defend Christianity. So I got all this information up in my noodle, you see. And then something happened. I lost my brain. I haven't got a clue where it is. Have you seen my brain? I thought I had it in my pocket. But we're not talking about my pocket brain, are we? No. We're talking about me noodle. Well, I point there, but that's not where it is. I don't know where it is, but we've lost it. Basically what I'm getting at is the fact that, you know, after I stopped studying all this stuff, and there are a few reasons I did. One is because, you know, after having this moment of clarity, where I became convinced that Christianity is true, I just didn't really feel the need anymore, and so I became lazy. So I didn't read as much, I didn't debate any. I sort of burned out on debating, actually. And I also started making longbows. When I started making longbows, that became such an obsession that I just hardly read anything at all anymore, except unless it had something to do with making bows. And it also took up a lot of time, but also around quite distracting. And so I kind of feel like Charlie towards the end of Flowers for Algernon sometimes, because I've forgotten a lot of stuff that I used to know, and I no longer see the clarity of things like I used to. But I still think it would be equally hard to argue me out of the faith today as it was back then. And it's not because I can respond to any argument that comes along. It's because I trust the past me. I trust that the past me knew what he was talking about. And even though I've forgotten a lot, I'm relying on a phantom argument, really, because I don't remember everything. So, anyway, that's how I rely on phantom arguments. And if you think about it, we would have to do that. All of us have to rely on phantom arguments because it's impossible. I mean, nobody remembers everything that they've ever read, and nobody remembers every lecture they've ever been to, or every thought that they've ever had. Sometimes we'll work through some problem early in life, and then we'll solve the problem to our own satisfaction, and that's it. And years later, we may forget why it is we came to some conclusion, but we'll still be very convinced of that conclusion because we've held it for such a long time, and we knew that at some point we held it for good reasons. And even though we don't remember what the reasons are, we trust ourselves that we had good reasons. And so now if somebody comes along and gives us an argument or whatever, it doesn't matter how convincing that argument it is, it's not going to convince us because we know that there was another argument that's probably more convincing than that one is and stuff. And I guess the liability with relying on phantom arguments is because, you know, it's possible for us to be wrong. It's possible for us to have been convinced about something in the past and been wrong about it. And now, because we don't remember what our reason is, we can't really go back and address those reasons. I guess to a certain extent, it's always good to keep an open mind. I mean, keep open the possibility that you could be wrong about things, because otherwise you would never be teachable. But on the other hand, you can't just... Well, I guess that's enough for this blog. Don't you think? Let's bring this blog to a close. Dum-dum. That's all, folks.